We are following this breaking news. U.S. Marine Corps veteran Trevor Reed, who you may remember was wrongfully detained by Russia for nearly 3 years before he was recently released in a prisoner swap, was, after that, wounded while fighting in Ukraine. These are images of Trevor Reed being freed in that April 2022 prisoner swap. CNN's Natasha Bertrand has been covering from the Pentagon. Natasha, do we know the severity of Reed's injuries?
Jim, we don't yet know Trevor Reed's status at this point, what his condition actually is. All we know at this point is that he was injured fighting in Ukraine and he was transported to a hospital in Kyiv. And since then, he has actually been medically evacuated out and into Germany. We still don't know just what condition he is in. But remember, Trevor Reed was released from Russian custody in April of 2022. So he has been out for about a year now after being wrongfully detained in Russia for nearly 3 years. He was arrested in Russia in 2019, and the Russians actually made him spend, or said he was going to spend 9 years in prison before the U.S. engaged in a prisoner swap with the Russians for a convicted drug smuggler, Konstantin Yaroshenko. Now, Trevor Reed, he has been active on social media over the last year or so. Of course, he has been on our air many times. He was tweeting just about as recently as a month ago. It is unclear when he went to Ukraine, but we are told that he was, again, injured there. Don't know just how badly he was injured, but that he has been evacuated to Germany at this point, Jim.
And among a number of former American service members who volunteered to go there to fight, as well as from other countries. Natasha Bertrand at the Pentagon, thanks so much. Boris.
UN atomic inspectors say they found explosive mines at the site of Europe's largest nuclear plant, which is under Russian control. The UN team says the mines were in a buffer zone on the periphery of the Zaporizhzhia plant and facing away from the site. Meantime, Ukraine is reporting small gains on the battlefield near the city of Bakhmut, where intense fighting has dragged on for months. But the small gains there could reap big rewards. CNN's Alex Marquardt is in the Black Sea port city of Odessa. So, Alex, how worrisome is this report about mines near the Zaporizhzhia plant?
Well, Boris, we're getting this information from the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and they're saying that if there were to be detonations or explosions from these mines, that it would likely not affect the nuclear safety or the security of this plant. So that is good news. Of course, you never like to hear the word explosives or mines alongside a nuclear power plant. This is the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe, and it has been in Russian-controlled territory since almost the very beginning of this war. So what this does really speak to is Russia building up its fortifications, Russia really entrenching itself in and around this plant. The IAEA was aware of other explosives inside and outside the plant, they say, and what we understand these ones are that were spotted by IAEA experts over the weekend are directional anti-personnel mines that they are pointing outward, so away from the plant. Anti-personnel mines are, of course, designed to hurt, maim, or kill humans, and so they would not be expected to harm the plant itself, of course, should they go off. Now, the experts who were there on the ground, they were told by people who were working in the facility, and these are still, nuclear experts. These are people who have been working in the plant for some time, despite this Russian occupation, that this was a military decision, that this is an area controlled by the Russian military. And then we heard also in this statement from the IAEA, an understatement, if you will, Boris, that these explosives are inconsistent with safety standards and nuclear security guidance. Just a nice way of saying that we would much rather that explosives and mines were not near the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe. Boris?
Yeah, an understatement indeed. Alex, what can you tell us about the small gains that Ukraine has made in Bakhmut?
Obviously, positive momentum for Ukrainian forces, but they are modest gains, both in the east around Bakhmut and in the south. Now, of course, Bakhmut is one of the most fiercely fought over cities since the beginning of this war. Russia does control it, but Ukraine is trying to encircle it, not doing so well on the northern part of the city, but they say that they are pushing around to the south, which could eventually cut off Russia's efforts to resupply the city and take higher ground. And then in the south, which is arguably the bigger priority in this counteroffensive, we understand that they have made some gains on two different axes as they try to push down towards the Sea of Azov. The big goal there, Boris, is to cut this land bridge, this very wide stretch of territory that connects Russian-occupied Crimea with Russian-occupied Donbas. We hear from the Institute for the Security of War, which is an outside monitoring group that Ukrainian forces have managed to push forward about a mile, just over a mile, 1.7 kilometers. But they have had to dig in. This is an extremely tough fight. We've been there, Boris. We've spoken with the soldiers. It is a very densely mined area, and those forces are facing fierce artillery from the Russian side. But they are making some small gains here, Boris.
Alex Marquardt reporting from Odessa. Jim?
Retired Major General Spider Marks here with me now. So, General Marks, you put a bunch of mines and explosives close to the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. Was that in a deliberate attempt, preparations, do you believe, by Russia to create possibility of a radiological attack there?
No, I don't think that. I think what the Russians are doing are saying, we own this and we have no intent of giving it up. It also restricts, when you look where Zaporizhzhia is relative to Crimea and the new land bridge, if you will, that's connected Donetsk and the Donbas region to Crimea. It limits the maneuverability for the Ukrainian forces and for the Russians. It gives them a good defensive position, and it limits the maneuverability for the Ukrainians in that area if they're trying to isolate either north or to the south and west.
Understood, but you're not concerned about the nuclear implications, because there'd been talk and concern, you heard this from Ukrainian officials, about Russia laying the groundwork for a false flag attack, which they have tried to do multiple times in other categories, to do something truly dangerous like that, but blame Ukraine.
Now, I really don't see that. I mean, there's nothing but losers across the board if that were the case.
Understood.
I think it would be catastrophic. It truly would, and it wouldn't be able to be mitigated in any particular way. So I don't see that as a risk to Zaporizhzhia.
Fair enough. Let's go on to the progress of the war. Ukrainians are reporting some small territorial gains around Bakhmut, but in the larger picture, the progress of the counteroffensive has not been as fast as expected. Did some reporting on this a number of weeks ago. How concerned are you about that? Do you believe that Ukrainians have the ability to turn that around?
Well, several things here, Jim. First of all, attacking through these defensive barriers that the Russians have put in place is going to be very difficult. It's slow maneuvering. You have to have really good intelligence. You have to reach out. You have to know where you want to go. But it takes a lot of firepower once you can identify a gap, and you have to exploit that. So these kinds of operations take time. So I don't know what the pace is supposed to look like. Many would label this as a desultory pace. It's very slow. Yeah, it might be. But it needs to be in order to size up what the Russians are up to. So I'm not concerned that this is necessarily off kilter, off pace.
Okay.
The Ukrainians are doing it at a tempo that they can sustain.
And by the way, as I understand it, you need 3-to-1 advantage typically to
Exactly
attack the
correct.
defended positions. The Ukrainian president just last week attached some blame for this on the slow delivery of weapons systems from the West, and he made the point that you get those systems, and you have to train Ukrainian forces up on them, and that gave Russia time to dig in further. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
I don't. I don't. Look, let's just state President Zelensky is a Churchillian kind of leader. That's great. I think what you have to realize is you look at this Ukrainian military, it's getting this support from the West, and each one of these enablers provides an advantage, but you have to synchronize all that together. You have to conduct operational art, maneuver, achieving tactical objectives, tying them together, and you have to do that in a three-dimensional space. You have to command the air, you have to command cyber, you have to have great intelligence, you got to have long-range fires. All that has to be synchronized, and I don't think they have the numbers of those enablers in order to achieve that level of operational success.
Understood. Well, listen, there's still time. We'll be watching closely.
Of course.
General Spider Marks, thanks so much.